Welcome to Kenpo University. My name's Alan Babinick, and I'm your instructor. And today, we're talking about the ideal phase of the techniques. Now, the ideal phase is as written, like in the manual. Hopefully, not always necessarily true, but hopefully, the manual matches what your instructor does, okay? So, if your instructor changes a technique because they don't like it, or they don't like how it's done, and they change it into something else, and that's how they taught you, if you learned a technique a different way than it's supposed to be done ideally, that's not your fault. You learned it the way you were taught it, right? Okay. So if things are a little bit different, it's not your fault as long as you didn't change it. Okay? If you change it, that's on you. All right? So when you learn a technique, they have to be, if you want the whole system to fit together and mesh, you have to do the ideal phases of all the techniques. And I'm going to do a super fast but long reason why. Okay? So one of the bigger groups that we do is the right punch group when your left foot's forward and you're doing a left block or a left inward parry. All right? Now, there's a bunch of techniques in this group. Here's how I remember them. And this is why you want to remember the ideal phase, because they all fit together. They'll mesh, and this makes sense. All right? So, when I have a right punch coming at me, I'm going to do attacking mace. My right foot steps back. I block. I punch. Do you see how that went? I'll do it this way. I step back, boom, and I throw my punch. So that's a horizontal strike. When I do flashing wings, I step up, boom, I do my inward elbow. Do you see how that's a horizontal strike? So I have one long range, one medium range, or short range, you might even say. Or, yeah, you get it. Hand range, elbow range, right? Okay, so those were the horizontals, all right? The hanging hands techniques are dance of death. So now dance of death has parry. I step up, I parry, and I put myself in a position. This hand's down here. It's hitting up to the groin. So my hand is just hanging down here. I step up, I parry, and then I hit. So it's parry hit as you're going through. Okay? Then we have thundering hammers. Block, and my hand's hanging down here. And then whoo, shuffle in with that forearm. All right? But you saw it was a hanging hands technique. It was down here. Sleeper, another hanging hands technique. I step up, I block, my hand's down here. This shoots up to the a ridge hand to the throat. So, but my hand started down here. I'm like, whoa! And then this hand just shoots straight up. And by the way, when I do this, I always used to do this huge arc. People can block that. So when you're doing this technique, you're moving off to the side. This hand's hanging down here. I'll move it so you can see it was behind my leg. From here, it just shoots. It's doing that type of motion. It just comes up through the punch position and goes into just a little bit of an arc into the throat. So those are the hanging hands. Then we have flashing mace. So flashing mace works up the circle. So when you do flashing mace, I did my step forward, did my block, I do my break. You saw this was coming up the circle, and then you hit and go around. Taming the mace goes down the circle. So taming the mace, I'm doing that. So I'm either busting the nose with the hammer fist and then coming in, or you could chop to the nose right through the eyes. Gotta watch it, don't hurt your fingers if you do that version. So stepping up, palm. I like to palm to the nose, slice through the eyes, collapse the arm, back knuckle grab, throw. Hopefully you know the techniques. All right? So flashing mace came up the circle. I feel like I'm playing guitar. And then taming the mace came down the circle. So it came down this way as you're coming in. So when I'm doing these techniques, that's how they group. Okay, that's how I group them. So, and those were all left foot forward. So attacking mace, horizontal. Flashing wings, horizontal. Dance of death, up the circle. Hanging hands, up the circle. What was next? Thundering hammers, block, forearm, and then the sleeper block, more of a ridge shooting straight up this way. Then you have flashing mace coming up the circle, coming up this way, and then you have taming the mace coming down the circle, whether the hammer fist or the chop. So up to green at least, that's how those group. So the ideal stage for the hanging hands techniques, they're down here, right? So if I did Dance of Death, and I started up like this, I'll do it a little sideways so you can see better. And I started out like this hand would now, because I brought it up, have to go all the way around and up instead of just shooting this up with the torque of the body. Now all of a sudden you're adding a lot of time to the technique, okay? I would rather do something else if my hand came up, right? So if you start, or if you didn't learn the techniques this way in the first place, you don't know, right? You didn't know this stuff existed, probably. I didn't. I had to learn this too. I went for years and years without knowing how to do all this stuff, right? So if you learned it different, like not as a hanging hands technique or something like that, it's not on you. It's on whoever taught you, all right? You have to stay in the ideal phase, though, so that you see how all those techniques, how many did I do? 7 techniques? So you see how all 7 of those techniques fit together. So you have 3 hanging hands, 2 horizontals, and 2 with the vertical circles. Makes sense, right? If you start doing other things with your hands, you're not going to have that ideal phase. All right, now that I've done that, if you do extensions, every extension has something new in it, okay? I would say every technique, every base technique has something new in it. It might be just a different variation of what you did before, but it's done differently, or the timing's different. Every technique and every extension should be different. If they were the exact same, why would we do them? Right? Okay? So, if you're doing, let's say we're getting up into the extensions and stuff like that, and you're doing a technique, whatever, where you're doing a rear buckle, and you're buckling the guy out, and you're doing your hammer fist. So, if I hold his head, if I do it this way every single time, I'm going to miss things. All right? So, just because you like to do it a certain way doesn't mean that you should do it that way all the time. If you can, that's great. But don't change a technique. You can't do the head grab technique where you grab his head and throw him if his head's way back here, you know? So I'll show you what I mean. So if I was here, I'm hitting the guy in the face, whatever, it doesn't matter. I buckle in, and if I hit to the groin and I buckled his leg out and I keep his head up here, now I'm reaching like way behind me to try to pull him into a knee. No, I don't want to work that hard, right? So when you come in, you hammer, keep this hand up as the guy falls down here. Now I can grab his head. I want him to bend over. I want him here. Now I can do my knee and step back and do the rest of my technique. Okay? If I'm doing entwined maces, as I buckle through this way, I don't want his head here. If his head fell all the way here, like I just had, when I twist and try to go into my extension, he's in my way. So I have to go in for entwined maces with my hand up. And then I can get the rest of the technique in there, okay? So with the knee, the chop, and go in with the rear crossover. So even if you love entwined maces, and that's your favorite way to finish the guy off, still do the other ones. You can't change, well, you can, just don't. You shouldn't change it that way, to I want to do these extensions, my way every single time. Because then you become what we call a 4-trick pony. You're somebody that only knows, a couple different ways to do everything. So you really didn't study motion and say, well, how come on this extension, it says to do this? How come on this extension it says to do this? Get what I mean? So a lot of the ones that are a little bit different, or how you can think of them different. If I'm neutral, got some guy, just hit him. Who cares how? I just hit him. If I go forward with a crossover and I hit low to the groin, that'll bring his head in because this hand's back here. Now I can turn and chop him because he's reacting to that. Of course, that's going to be super quick, right? You're just going to go boom and be done with it. If I went in and I did double hit this way or up to his face on his body, if I did a double hit, is there anything left on that? No, I blew him away, right? So you couldn't do the chop to the throat if you did that. If I came in with a double hit and I moved him away, oh, maybe I could come in and do a knee stomp. But I know, because I did a double hit, he's moving away, right? Also, if I go in with a punch, and this is not doing anything, now he's going to be leaning backwards, his groin's down here someplace, and I could do like a circling fans type thing, okay? So when you do those front crossovers, they're all different for different reasons. Some of them are, a couple of them, if you're trying to do the same thing, or could be the same, it's what you do afterwards that changes, okay? But for the most part, when you're doing all this stuff, you have to learn the ideal phase and stick with the ideal phase and change it when you want to, but you always teach the ideal phase. Otherwise, people are going to be missing stuff throughout the system, and they're going to say, hey, how come I can never chop the guy in the throat? He's never there. Or how come I can never get my knee to his groin? Well, because you blew him away. That's why. You know, the study of motion is what we do. So don't be a four-trick pony. Make sure you're staying ideal with all the techniques and trying to say to yourself, well, how's this change? How's this one different? How's this one different from this one? If two things look exactly alike, look what's happening next, okay? So look at what's happening afterwards. So for example, sometimes if I'm talking extensions again, if I did a heel kick, roundhouse kick, put my foot down and I stomp on the guy on his groin here and I come up and I'm going to stomp on his ankle here, one time I do it, he's face down. And I have one set of targets. One time I do it, he's face up. Different set of targets. All right, so if I do something the same-ish as you go through, you have to realize something else may have changed. And it's just showing you, oh, well, if you're here, you do it this way. If he's here, you do it this way, type stuff. So I hope you learn the ideal phase of everything. If you're not sure, ask me. Shoot me an email, al@kenpouniversity.com, okay? And ask me whatever you want. I don't care. I will get back to you. So when you're going through this stuff, don't be a four-trick pony. Remember all your ideal stuff, okay? And then if you have a favorite that you love to do, if it fits, go ahead, do it. If it doesn't fit, do what you're supposed to do, the ideal phase, or what you're supposed to do, okay? So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Sorry it went a little bit long and I rambled, but there you go. It's what I do. Thank you for watching this video production from Kenpo University.